Macklin Celebrini has been one of the most talked about prospects in the whole NHL, and a lot of people are saying he's what Bedard should have been. Now, I'm pretty sure I don't agree with that, but nonetheless, he's been a beast for San Jose this year, and I think he's going to be one of the faces of the NHL for years to come. Now, the major reason for all this attention is obviously his exceptional offensive skill. However, there's another piece of the puzzle that makes him so dominant. It's his insane level of confidence on the ice. And if you're a player who looks awesome in practice but struggles to consistently show up and dominate in games, then you're going to want to sit down and watch this whole video. Because I know what it's like to invest thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours into extra skill sessions, workouts, film coaching, only to see the same inconsistent results in games. That's why in this video, I'm going to break down the one hidden default setting in every player's brain that decides whether they play to their potential consistently in games like Celebrini, or if every time they show up, they and their parents are asking what version of this player is going to show up today. But let's get into it. This is going to be a really fun one. So what is this default setting that I'm talking about? I call it your default mode. It's basically the version of you that shows up automatically when your name gets called to step on the ice, or when someone says, what type of player are you? You don't decide to be it. This is what gets wired into your brain over time. So the default mode is basically two core things. It's how you see yourself as a player, plus how your body feels when you're under pressure. These two pieces really interact together. And for some players, that default is keep it simple, get it deep, don't be the reason that you cost your team a goal. And it's this feeling of fear and hesitation because you don't want to be the player who does the wrong thing. Then for other players like Celebrini, it's give me the puck. I'm dangerous. I belong here. I can make things happen. And there's this feeling of calm presence, but also intensity that allows them to be able to attack the play. That's why you're going to see people the same age, same level, sometimes even the same general skill set. But what separates them is they have a completely different default mode. And here's what's important. Most players bounce between two core lanes. One lane is what I call attack hockey, or the attack mindset. This is where you feel loose, you trust yourself, and you just want the puck so you can try stuff. And then the other lane is survival hockey. This is where your chest gets tight, your vision shrinks, and you start trying to play safe and not do the wrong thing. Now, a lot of guys in practice live in attack hockey, but the second the game starts, they snap into this survival mode. And the advantage Celebrini has is that his default under pressure still looks like attack hockey. He plays with the same pace, the same intent, and the same core ability is always accessible to him because he's not in that protective mode. Now, the reason why your brain switches into survival hockey is because your brain is always doing safety math. What I mean by safety math is that when you panic and chip it away, your brain basically gets relief. It gets a reward and a feeling of, okay, things are actually kind of okay now. Or when you play it safe, you don't have to get the heat from the coach, so you just continue to play it safe more often. Or maybe you hide a bit in games and you avoid getting exposed so you don't have to deal with people putting pressure on you all the time. This is safety math. It's your system learning, this is how we stay safe here. If we step out of who we've been, maybe we might get hurt, maybe we might be in danger. And our brain has learned this through thousands of years of evolution to keep us alive. And so for these players, they basically stay in this default mode. And it doesn't happen because it helps them play better. It helps them because it helped them in the past feel less pain. And this is the same thing people are trying to describe when they say the energy you have, or the frequency people have, or the way they manifest things in the world. It's really your default mode. It's really your emotional baseline that leaks into everything you do. It's how you think, it's how you move, it's how you talk to yourself. And ultimately, this leads to how other people label you because they say, he's just that type of player. That's how he thinks. That's how he approaches things. That's his energy. Now, here's the key. Once you understand those kind of two lanes that you can shift into, it becomes very obvious what's happening. Attack hockey is when you're really in this kind of like superstar default mode. And then when you're playing survival hockey, it's really when you're in like grinder mode. And as soon as you shift out of grinder mode, you run into one big problem. And just a quick pause before we move on. If this is really hitting and you want help building a full mental system around this instead of trying to figure it out alone or watching a few different videos, there's two links you can check out below. The first link shows you what it looks like to actually work with us. And if you'd like to watch that video, you can check it out, and then you can apply below that video if you're interested. Now, keep in mind, we only work with select players, so if you do apply, we will actually look at your application, so take it seriously, fill it out with intention. And then the second link is basically just a free training that I've created that goes over the things I've taught high-level pro players, D1, junior players, and helps players to figure out how to actually attack their mental game and start to really develop a proper mental system. So grab whichever one you want, and ultimately, these are going to be really key tools to help you build on all the stuff we talk about in the rest of the video. But let's get back to it. So a consistent question I get asked by so many players is, why does my confidence feel like a roller coaster over the season? And here's the pattern I see with these really serious players who ask a question like that. These players will start doing mental stuff. So maybe they start visualizing, maybe they start journaling, maybe they start doing positive self-talk. And oftentimes they start feeling better for a bit. You start to kind of do a little mental training and things start to kind of work. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. I'm feeling more confident. I'm starting to believe in myself. And maybe you even have a few good games. So then what that player starts to think is like, okay, I'm starting to become that guy. I'm starting to figure figure it out. But then something happens. Maybe you have a bad weekend. Maybe you hit a post. Maybe you make a brutal turnover in one of the games. Maybe the coach tightens your leash or sits you for a game or sits you for a couple periods. Or maybe even go a couple games without a point. And then what happens is your brain goes right back into that old mode. I'm back to zero again. Nothing's changed. Yeah, the mental stuff just doesn't work. But here's the truth. Real confidence is not how high you get when things are going well. Real, true confidence is your ability to maintain your state or stay in that default mode when reality does swing into a negative direction. Because hockey has a rhythm. Highs and lows are non-negotiable. It's like the tide. It goes in and out, and momentum's going to swing. You're going to have bad shifts. You're going to have bad periods. You're going to have times where your team loses the game. That happens. But the real skill of confidence is staying in your identity, being who you are, staying in that default mode when that swing happens instead of letting that momentum get stopped the second that something happens. It's like somebody chirps you, it pulls you completely out of your game because you say, oh man, I got to go deal with that. And you get distracted. You get in your head about something that should have just kind of passed through you if you were truly good at being confident. And realize this whiplash is not random. It happens because your brain is always running one question in the background. Am I moving towards what I want or away from it? And obviously what you want is you want more ice time, more trust, get it scouted, D1 or junior offers, or you eventually want to play pro. So whenever something threatens that, your system flags danger and it freaks out. So if you turn it over on the blue line, you get scored on when scouts are there, you get scratched in. Again, your nervous system freaks out, you go right back into that old mode. You feel that anger, that shame, that fear, that frustration. And now that response is normal and it's totally okay. It's your body reacting to the threat. But the problem is what happens next for most players. For most players, right after that happens, your mind tries to explain it and it creates meaning around that emotion. And then that meaning that your brain creates, those thoughts you have in your head, the story you tell about those emotions is what creates your default mode. Because ultimately, nothing is a disaster. Nothing is the end of the world until you label it that way. It's just like the saying that there is no such thing as failure. It's only when you decide you failed and you give up. So when you automatically label getting sat as I'm screwed, or if you automatically label one bad turnover in your first shift as the game's done, well, what do you think's going to happen in your brain? The second you start believing that, your system goes straight into survival hockey again. You start avoiding, you play it safe, you don't stand out, you just kind of become invisible. It's basically a protection mechanism. Now, somebody who's in that I do mode, somebody like a Celebrini says, yeah, that sucked, but it was one bad moment. I know who I am, I'm going to play the next shift. That's the difference you see with these really elite players like a Celebrini or even like a Crosby. They have the same emotions as everybody else, but they don't let one bad moment rewrite who they are as a player. Now, of course, a lot of that comes from the fact that they've had a ton of success in the past and they're really good, but you can still learn from this and you can still apply it to your game because you're probably better than you let yourself believe you are. Because it's not stats that wreck your confidence, it's the story you attach to your stats. It's not the mistake that ruins your confidence, it's how you interpret that mistake. And so for most players, the story they create pulls them back into grinder mode. And that's exactly why your confidence feels like a roller coaster. Not because you're soft, but because no one's actually taught you how to tag these moments in a way that protects your identity instead of just breaking it and blowing it up. And keep in mind, that voice that says I'm back to zero is almost always your default mode trying to keep control. Realize you can stumble, you can make mistakes, you can screw up, but you're not back to zero. You have to realize that's a story your brain is creating to try to keep you safe. And I remember I had a player who was dealing with this exact thing in junior. He was playing out in the BCHL a few years ago, and he was in this really weird state of he was putting all this pressure on himself to produce, and whenever he would make a mistake, he would automatically start to associate that with like, oh, it's not a good game for me anymore. And then he would go into this kind of negative spiral of, oh, I'm not going to get points today. It's a waste of a game. And what we talked about is starting to rewrite that story, that a mistake was actually getting him one step closer to the next play, to the next goal, to the next sick move. Or for a defensive player, this is a different player I'm thinking of now, we would say, okay, if you get beat, it's just getting that mistake out of the way so that you can have a good rest of the game. And just a shift like that rewrites the story in your head, changes the way you emotionally react, and changes your identity kind of attachment to it. It resets the default mode. And once you see that, it makes sense why you can have two players come into a league. Let's say they come into the USHL. They have similar skill sets, but you'll see them just have completely different seasons. It's because they have a completely different story in their head whenever something goes right, whenever something goes wrong. And so that's going to set us up really well to talk about what actually happens inside your head and how you can flip that from survival hockey into a whole default mode. Now realize that when you try to change your default mode, the old one doesn't just disappear. It fights back because it wasn't built to help you score more or put up more points. It was built to protect you. Realize Celebrini still has that protective layer too. The difference is he's trained it so it doesn't grab the wheel the second that he has a bad shift. Now here's the simplest way to understand it. You have basically two modes that can always be switched on and off in your head. You have basically that superstar mode, that free, calm, attacking version of you that's always there. And I know it's always there because everybody as a kid always has the ability to just be crazy and confident. Go and talk to any little 2-year-old kid. They don't care about anything. They'll just do whatever they want. They act on instinct at all moments. But then what happens is we have lane 2, or kind of mode 2, that we can switch into, which is that protective layer, right? It's the grinder mode version of us. And this is patterns that we've built over years of surviving pressure, trying to deal with criticism, mistakes, embarrassment. And this is the layer that says, play it safe. I don't want to get yelled at. Blame the ref so it's not my fault and I don't have to feel bad about myself. Just go jump on your phone after the game and everything will be fine. And this is really important to understand. When your old identity feels threatened, it often fights back with 2 core weapons. One, it's going to overthink and it's going to make you doubt yourself. So maybe you just moved up the lineup to the top line, or maybe you just moved up to a new league. And suddenly you go from being in that kind of superstar mode to being in that mode of doubting yourself and feeling like you're grinding, you're kind of shaky with the puck, and realize that this isn't you being broken. That's proof that you're actually changing. But most players make this mistake. This feels uncomfortable. This isn't who I am. Maybe I can't actually handle this. Maybe I'm not good enough to be at this level or on this line. But realize that's not the real you. That's the old protection programming coming in trying to pull you back down. And it does this because it doesn't want your identity or who you are to be in danger. And now you might not be able to stop that layer from showing up yet, but you can stop it from running the shift. And that's the skill we're going to talk about next. So in games, you have to realize your goal isn't to fix your confidence. Your job is to win the tiny battles with the state you're in, to stay in that ideal default mode. And if you can do that shift by shift, that's when your real game is going to show up more and more, and you're going to find yourself being more and more consistent shift to shift. So if you do notice something goes wrong and one of these defensive mechanisms comes in, use the 3-step reset method. Step 1, notice the surge. Right after something bad happens, just catch it. Notice where you feel it in your body. All right, my chest is hot. I'm pissed off about that call. My stomach dropped. I'm embarrassed that I made a turnover. I'm in my head. I'm getting kind of scared. What if I get hit again? You don't want to argue with it. Don't want to push it away. Just note it. Yep, okay, I'm feeling it. And now that you have awareness, now you can stop it from spiraling out. You do this by actually labeling it with a clear name. All right, there's that default grinder mode trying to come back in again. All right, I'm trying to play it safe. Okay, there's that disappear mode trying to get me to go into the don't make plays mode again. And you don't have to be perfect at this. The key is just creating a label that allows you to create separation and realize, oh, okay, here's that thing coming in. And by saying that short line, it is so powerful. And then the third step is just set a clear intention to take that emotion and channel it into the next thing you do. If you've watched any of my videos, I talk about this concept all the time, but if you can do that, it allows you to quickly reset your mind and direct you back into the ideal place. Now, this is really something you can do like in games. This is the little reset routine you can do. But this isn't going to rewire your actual default mode. This is just how to deal with it when that mode does come in. Now, if you really want to make a shift, you need to start doing things outside of the game as well. These are 3 core habits you can start to stack in to start to build up that new mode so you can stay in that default kind of superstar mode more consistently. So habit 1 is a 2-minute post-game check-in. So after every game, write this down and be honest with yourself. A best self moment. So when did I really step into the best version of me today? Okay, what was a slip moment? When did that grinder mode or kind of panic take over? And number 3, next rep. What's one adjustment my best self makes next time? What am I going to do if I'm the best version of me next game? This is going to give you a really clear direction of what to work on going into next week. And realize there's no drama, there's no roasting yourself. It's just go back, study the film, and you're going to figure out how to improve. Because the key isn't thinking in extremes of good game, bad game. It's being clear on, okay, what's the pattern? How am I going to adjust? The second daily habit is you want to create daily default mode reps. So pick one identity sentence for who you want to be. I'm calm, I attack, and I drive the play. I want the puck in big moments. I'm composed under pressure. Then each day, do 10 reps of feeling that feeling and going through some mental reps of how you'd actually feel, how you'd play, what you'd be thinking in these moments. See yourself calling for the puck more. See yourself being that guy who holds it for that extra second. See yourself being the first player on the forecheck and turning it over. This means you're not waiting to feel like that player. You're just starting to train your brain and your nervous system to act like that player before you actually get into the game. And then your brain starts to go, oh, I guess that's who I am. And then habit 3 is doing 5-minute pressure visualizations. Each day, pick one thing that you want to work on in your game. It's maybe how you respond to turnovers, how you deal with bad calls, what you do when you get scored on, what you do if you get sad. And practice feeling that emotion for a second, really understanding how your brain responds, and then practice doing that routine of identifying it, noticing it, and then being like, okay, I feel it here in my body, give it a name, and then practice channeling it into a better decision and visualize yourself doing that. This is not fake positivity. This is rewiring your brain to handle pressure, mistakes, and this negative default mode. And when you stack these together, you will change your entire mental game. So now here's the bigger picture. Realize you don't have a confidence problem. You have a default mode problem. And ultimately, this is about the deepest story that your brain is running right now. I'm the guy who starts off the season hot but fades away. I'm the player who doesn't handle the puck well. Your game is going to keep snapping tapping back into that mode, into that grinder mode, the second pressure hits if you don't actually change that default mode. But when you do change that default mode and you start to tap into the kind of superstar mode more consistently, bad games stop becoming identity crises and they actually become something that doesn't really affect you. Good games stop feeling like random streaks and you start feeling like the same player in practice, games, and big moments. And that's the goal of what we do. That's why we train players to rewire their mind and their nervous system. Not to feel confident when things go perfect, but have confidence that survives when a bad bounce or a bad call or a rough game happens. And this is the part that most players can't handle, and it's what leads to most players not having good careers. And it's exactly why I do this, because I was a player like that at a lot of times in my career. They're emotionally dependent on outside things like their coaches or scouts or their teammates to hype them up all the time. But you can't rely on stats. You can't rely on the coach's mood, how many shifts you get, how many points you have, the refs, scouts. You can't rely on any of those things, because the second the outside world shifts, you can't just collapse inside. You have to upgrade the internal and then the external changes. And if you're a player who really wants to go deep with this, you work super hard, but you're not getting rewarded, you feel like you're struggling with inconsistency, then realize there's nothing wrong with you. You just need to figure out how to change your default mode, and you can train it. And if you want help with actually doing this, how to rewire your nervous system, how to rewire your brain, then click the first link below, apply to work with us, and I'm really excited to help you figure this out so you can really figure out how good you can actually be in games.